But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Those Were the Days, and with me is George Mitchell, who will take over the reins of the good ship NUFC Matters and take us back to when, George?
1989-90.
Good stuff.
A season I would say was a recovery season, but it had its ups and downs. Like I usually do, if you're thinking about what life was like, top of the charts, Look Away by Chicago, My Prerogative, Bobby Brown, Every Rose Has a Thorn, Poison, Straight Up by Paula Abdul. And if you go to the movies, well, we've got another Indiana Jones in the thing, Batman, Back to the Future 2, and Look Who's Talking. It's quite an interesting group of movies. The football, there's the squad. I think I put two at one black and white and one colour, as I sometimes do. It just gives an interesting perspective on the colours and so on. And the Bald Eagle, Jim Smith, our manager. It's a little known fact that at the beginning of this season, Jim Smith could have left with to go into the First Division with Manchester City, and he didn't. And I've seen it written ever so many times. He said, I don't need to. I'm at a bigger club already. And he stayed with me. However, the board had to back him with no money. The profit of the previous season was just nine grand. And they were heading towards £1 million in debt, new mortgage for the new stand, etc., etc. And so he stuck with me. But his policy was he would sell to buy, basically, and the ins and the outs are fascinating. The ins, Wayne Faraday, John Gallagher, Mark Stimson, Kevin Dillon, Mark McGee, Mickey Quinn, Darren Bradshaw, John Burridge, Lee Clark was given a professional contract, Steve Howie was given a professional contract, and then he bought Roy Aitken, Billy Askew, and Matty Appleby was given a professional contract. And the outs, some big names out, John Henry, Dave McCreary, Kenny Sansom, Frank Pingle, Rob MacDonald, Michael O'Neill, Gary Kelly, Andy Thorne, and old friend Anthony Loma went to Lincoln City. So the big difference in the buying policy was that we bought, just keep flicking those over, Steve, that's fine, just sewing the shirts. I don't know why, but I like that green and yellow one.
Yeah, me too.
The buying policy of Smith was basically win or bust, because he bought experienced older players. In fact, the average age of the team went up enormously with the people he brought in. But some of the buys were crucial. Roy Aitken, I think, was a superb buy, because he didn't just come in; he walked in as captain. And really took hold of the team. So we'll get off to our start of the season. And guess what, Steve? 10 friendlies.
That's 10. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm puzzled by this, as you know, I have been for a while. And it can only be a money-making exercise for Newcastle United, because a lot of them are away. So one assumes that if they're playing away, they're getting a fee for playing. So they went to Walsall, they went to Scandinavia again, played 4-5 games in Scandinavia, came back and went to Scotland to Wraith Rovers, then down to Carlisle, and then they had a match at Scarborough. And I think there's actually a programme that Scarborough printed, which is unusual. And I think it was to do with that had redeveloped the ground, and I think they were opening the ground and had doing all sorts of other things. So that's quite a nice one for a local club. So we're off to the first league game of the season at Leeds United, and always a tough one, always an entertaining one as well. So we go at Leeds 25,000 at the game, and sorry, we're at home, not away. We're at home. Jim Smith puts out Tommy Wright, Ray Ransom, who was to be transferred, Paul Sweeney, Kevin Dillon, Kevin Scott, Andy Thorne, John Gallagher, Kevin Brock, Mickey Quinn, Mark McGee, and Wayne Faraday. And Leeds United come with Howard Wilkinson's now with their manager. He swapped from Sheffield Wednesday to Leeds. Mervyn Day, Mel Sterland, John McClelland, Peter Haddock, who they bought from us, of course, Jim Beglin, Mickey Thomas, Gordon Strachan, who come from Manchester United, David Batty is a name we get to know, John Henry, who they bought from us, Bobby Davidson, and Ian Baird, who also would have connections with us. A good game. It was a one which we wanted to get off to a good start. You know, Smith made a lot of getting off to a good start, and we did. Mickey Quinn on 18 minutes scored a penalty, got off the mark. Unfortunately, within minutes, Ian Baird had equalised. And then just on 29 minutes, Bobby Davidson put Leeds 2-1 in the lead, and that's how we went in at half time. And it looked like it was going to be hard. But after the into the second half, after the half time whistle, we came out and we just took over the game. In fact, one person took over the game, Mickey Quinn, because he went goals bonanza. 47 minutes he put equalised, 67 minutes he put one front, 87 minutes he put one further in front, and then on 88 minutes John Gallagher made it 5-2, which was a really good start, a really good win against a strong Leeds side. So the 25,000 went home happy.
And a big boycott that day. United Supporters for Change organised a boycott to try to get everybody to avoid going to the game. And of course, there was still, as you say, 25,000 odd who went there. Yeah,
and the other thing was that behind the scenes, of course, Jim Smith, a lot of managers would, with the problems going on off the field, a lot of managers would have walked away from that alone. But he didn't. The ups and ins and outs of what was happening off the field were quite dramatic, really, between Hall and McKeague particularly. So we're off to Leicester City now, an away game at Leicester City, and 13,000 at the game. And James Smith sends an unchanged team. He's got Benny Christensen as a substitute. Leicester City managed by David Pleat now, the former Tottenham / Watford manager, and his players are very similar to the one that we'd seen last year, and has imported one or two like Gary McAllister from Leeds / Manchester United, and Alan Evans and Paul Ramsey, Alan Paris, Paul Reed, Tommy Wright and Wayne Clark, all good players who've gone into the Leicester side. So, and apparently they played well in the first game. So we're going to not find it easy, I don't think. So, and lo and behold, within half an hour, Gary McAllister's put Leicester in the lead. But it's a good game, both teams giving as good as they got. And then on 39 minutes, Mickey Quinn gets another one and equalises for Newcastle. And we go in at half time 1-1. Second half is end to end. It's the only way to describe it, I gather. And then John Gallagher on 55 minutes makes it 2-1. It looks like we might get a win, but then Tony Spearing, a forward that they've just brought in, a winger, dangerous winger, on 60 minutes makes it 2-2. It stays like that till the end of the game, and it's quite an attractive game of football. So we got another point on the board. We're establishing ourselves in a good place. Now we're home next to Oldham Athletic, and Oldham aren't the a team that's looking for the promotion. That they're going to be looking to stay about middle of the league. So this is a game we should win. But Newcastle being Newcastle, what we should win and do win are sometimes two different things. 20,800 at the game, and I suspect the boycott was having a small impact. Jim Smith puts out same team: Wright, Ransom, Stimson, Dillon, Scott, Thorne, Gallagher, Brock, Quinn, McGee and Faraday, and he's got Benny Christensen as substitute, and he comes on fairly early on to replace Ray Ranson, who gets a knock. Oldham now managed by Joe Royal, a big England centre-forward, Everton centre-forward, with a team of talented players, most of whom are on the wrong side of 13 on their way down, but some great names. Andy Rhodes in goal, Dennis Irwin from Manchester United, Andy Barlow from Manchester City, Nick Henry, Manchester City, Paul Warhurst from Birmingham, Rick Holden from Bolton, Andy Ritchie, Manchester United as a centre forward. Quite a nice side, but a one that's, as I say, they're all fairly getting on, and they're not the best team in the league, and this is a game we should win. So we go out with the team looking very good. The first half is very open, but we should be scoring goals and whatnot. But then on 43 minutes, just before the half-time whistle, Mickey Quinn makes it 1-0. And then we think that's it, we're on our way to a win. Then Rick Holden, the dangerous forward, on 61 minutes makes it 1-1. And you can feel the nervousness in the Gallagher corner. The 20,000 starting to get a bit uppity because looks like we're going to be pulled into a draw. But we needn't to worry because Mick Quinn sorted it out on 70 minutes and made it 2-1 with a penalty. It was a penalty because Mark McGee was brought down in the box. But a 2-1 win, and that's keeping where we want to be, up the top of the league, instead of looking over our shoulders. We're off to Bournemouth now, and it's a game we should win if everybody plays to form. And Jim Smith sends an unchanged team. He brings Ray Ranson back, and he's got John Anderson and Benny Christensen as substitutes. Bournemouth manager, fairly well-known man, Harry Redknapp. And he has assembled quite a nice team. Gary Payton, Sean Teal, Paul Miller, Paul Murrell, Peter Shearer, and a young man called Gavin Peacock appears on the team sheet. George Lawrence, Sean O'Driscoll, Sean Brooks, Paul Molden, and Luther Blissett, who he brought down from Watford. Good football side, playing good attacking football, and we're responding. And it looks like we're off to a flying start because in 3 minutes, Mickey Quinn opens the scoring, and we think, well, it looks like we're on our way to something here. But 24 minutes, and Paul Molden, their dangerous centre forward, scores and equalises, and so it looked like we're going to get a draw. But Bournemouth just seemed to turn it on in the second half, and Paul Molden gets a second on 65 minutes, and we lose 2-1, which isn't the end of the world, but Bournemouth aren't regarded as a championship side, but a champion winning side. But we don't get anything. So the next game is an away game at Oxford United. Again, a mid-table side at best. The Oxford team is now managed by Brian Horton, old Manchester City defender, in fact, an old Oxford United defender as well. And they have a side of mixture of young ones and people on the way out. And one or two names we know: Robbie Musto, who used to be at Middlesbrough, and Gary Smart, Colin Greenall, both fullbacks from Manchester City days, and Martin Foyle, quite a dangerous player, but he's a homemade one. He's a young man who's come through the Oxford ranks, so it's quite a nice, a good game that we should recover if we can. Jim Smith sends out an unchanged team, and has Anderson and Benny Christensen as subs again, and it's a home visit for Jim Smith because he's spent some time at Oxford, and it looks good. First 10 minutes, 8 minutes, and there's Mickey Quinn opening our account at 1-0, and he's on fire at the moment. He doesn't seem as though he can miss, and it's going well until just before half time, and there's a speculative shot from Robbie Mustoe, and it hits Ray Ransom on the backside, and of course it goes in the bottom corner, and we're 1-1 at half time, and okay, we can pull it back in the second half. Everybody thinks, well, we don't, and it's end to end to near the end, and then suddenly our friend who used to play at Middlesbrough, Robbie Mustoe, pulls a shot out of the blue from nowhere and makes it 2-1, and that's the way it stays till the end. So our second defeat, which is quite disappointing and quite worrying in many ways. So we come home to a home game against Portsmouth. Portsmouth are again another middle of the road team. People not sure what they're going to do in the league, what sort of position they're going to be, but middle of the table is what people are expecting. So we're going to. I'm sure Jim Smith was wanting them to have a go at this one. He can't put a same team out because there's a defensive injury, and Benny Christensen comes in, and John Anderson is substitute, and John Gregory's managing Portsmouth, ex-West Ham player, and he's got a tidy side: Alan Knight, Glenn Sanford, Gavin Maguire, and a young man at fullback called John Beresford, Mike Fillery, Kevin Ball, who we know from another place, Steve Wigley that they got from Nottingham Forest, a dangerous centre forward, Mark Chamberlain, Kenny Black, and Guy Wickingham, who's a dangerous forward as well, that they got from Leicester. Tidy side, but not one that should bother us. 19,500 at the game. We're sixth in the league at the moment, so a win would be very nice. And it's pretty dour stuff. Portsmouth don't want to lose it, and we don't seem to have the capacity to win it. So it's fairly dour. It's all in the middle of the park. Very, very boring. But then on 59 minutes we get a corner, and Mark McGee puts the ball into the middle, and there's Andy Thorne, a big centre half, nodding it in. I like that picture because it gives you an idea what the place was like. You know, there's still barriers up at the back, but that's because of the building, I think, more than anything. A great action shot, and I wonder if people watching this can pick out people they know, because it's quite a clear picture. Another good one from your friend, I think, is it?
Danny Brannigan.
Yeah. So that's a win on the board, and everybody's delighted with that, because we're heading up the right way. League Cup second round now, and we're drawn against Reading, and we're away in the first leg, and 8,000 at the game. There's hope on Tyne's side that we've got enough on our team to beat Reading, and that they're a division, you know, they're not the division's strongest side. And indeed, Jim Smith sends an unchanged team. He's confident about the way that he's playing, and Ian Brandford is the manager of Reading. He has, I think he's from Durham, Ian Brandford. Steve Francis, Lyndon Jones, Mark Hicks, Darren Wood, Steve Richardson, Stuart Bevan, Scott Taylor, Michael Julks, and then Lee Payne, who they bought from us in the summer, Keith Knight and Trevor Senior. Trevor Senior's the most dangerous player. He's been around a while in the London area and played for West Ham and others. And he's if there's going to be trouble, he's going to cause it. And lo and behold, that's exactly how it goes. It's even Stephen just before half time. Then Trevor Senior bang, 43 minutes, makes it 1-0 to Reading. We come up out there after half time, and John Gallagher gets an equaliser on 67 minutes. So it looks like it's at least going to bring a draw home. But then Trevor Senior twice, he sets up Scott Taylor in 79 minutes and he makes it 2-1. And then a solo goal from Senior just before the end, 86 minutes, makes it 3-1. So we come back to the second leg with a 3-1 deficit. And that's not what we expected, not what we hoped for. But on the other hand, it's our history in the League Cup, unfortunately. And we come home to an away game against Sunderland, and it's a game again we'd like to win. We're 7th in the league. It's Sunderland's now managed by Dennis Smith, who of course used to be a player as well. Jim Smith sends an unchanged team to Roker Park, and Benny Christensen's still a substitute. So we go, and there's 29,000 at the game. They're not pulling up trees at the moment, but they're not doing bad. Nice picture of John Anderson there, isn't it? It's in the green and yellow. Dennis Smith's the manager, and Tim Carter, Agabola is the fullback, George Hardiman, and then a midfielder called Paul Bracewell in the side. Gary Bennett, John McPhail, Gary Hours, Gordon Armstrong, Eric Gates, Marco Gabardini, and Dini, and Colin Pascoe as makes up the team. Tony Cullen and Thomas Hauser, the substitutes for Sunderland, and Cullen, a tidy young player, but just seemed to disappear all of a sudden. Anyway, it's a typical derby, end to end. Woodwork rattled a couple of times, but that's as close as anybody comes to scoring, and it ends up a 0-0 draw, which I suppose satisfies both teams in the end. But we could have done with the victory. It would have been nice to get a couple of points on the board. So we come home to the next match, which is against Watford, and Jim Smith's looking for a win. All of his press stuff is very, very hyped up towards a win in this match. We're 6th in the league, 18,000 at the game though, which isn't a brilliant crowd. And Jim Smith sends out another unchanged team once again. He's being true to the people he's picked, and he's bought most of these people now, because the ones in the team are people he's brought in. And Watford, well, Steve Harrison's still a manager, and the team is a recognisable one: Tony Corton, Nigel Gibbs, David Holdsworth, and then centre of the defence, Glenn Roeder, Kenny Jackett, Lee Richardson, Rod Thomas, Gary Porter, Glenn Hodges, who we know, Erwin Roberts, and Paul Wilkinson. And being tipped as a tidy side that might just challenge for promotion. It's a good game. We're set off as though we're going to win it, but unfortunately, a silly mistake at the back by Mark Stimson lets Paul Wilkinson in, and Watford go 1-0 into the lead. And that's got everybody nervous, but John Gallagher in 32 minutes pulls it back and makes it 1-1. And then right on half time, who else but Mickey Quinn makes it 2-1, and we it looks like we're going to stay that way, and we do. The second half is end to end, but no one's going to score any goals. So a nice 2-1 home win to get we're back on track, or at least in the right direction. And now we're off to Hull City. Not always a happy hunting ground for us, but that's where we're off on the 30th of September at the Boothbury Park. 9,600 at the game. And of course, after that last win, because the top of the league's so condensed, it pushed you up to third. And so we've got something to play for. And Hull City, good football inside. Colin Appleton, who we know from other places, is a well-known manager. And they have another of the Kelly boys in goals, Gavin Kelly, in goal for them. Neil Buckley, Steve Terry, the both from Chelsea, Richard Johnson, Wayne Jacobs, Peter Swan from Sheffield United, Billy Askew, who we get to know later in the season, Steve Doyle, Gareth Roberts, Andy Payton that they got from Burnley, and Ian McPartland, dangerous left winger from Aston Villa, Irishman. Jim Smith sends out an unchanged team again, sticking by the lads that he picked. And I think everybody's hoping that certainly Jim Smith's hoping to get something out of it. Ian McPartland frightens everybody on 13 minutes by putting Hull in the lead. However, it's not in the lead for long. 5 minutes later, John Anderson gets a goal from a corner. And then it's 1-1 at half time. Middle of the second half, Gary Brazil comes on a substitute and scores almost straight away on 71 minutes to make it 2-1. And then on 75 minutes, 4 minutes later, Mark McGee scores one of his blistering goals and makes it 3-1. So we're now cementing our place higher up the league. It takes a bit pressure off the manager, I think, is to say. And with Reading coming for a return game of the League Cup, everybody's 3-1 down. We've really got to if we're going to go through, we've got to give this a go. And Jim Smith sends out an unchanged team, and Reading, Ian Brandfoot, similar. It's a team that we played when we went down to Reading. Were there, and Danger Man Trevor Senior again is somebody you're going to have to watch. Well, it looks like it's going to be tough because we're heading towards half time, and they Reading look every bit as good as we are. And then there's a silly penalty by one of their defenders, Martin Hicks. He pulls down Mark McGee in the penalty area. Gary Brazil steps up and takes it and makes it 1-0. Just after half time, we're playing well, and none other than Kevin Brock, tidy little midfielder, takes the game by the scruff of the neck and he starts spraying the ball around. Not only that, he gets a free kick on 56 minutes and makes it 2-0. He then sets up another goal from a free kick, and Andy Thorne heads it in on 63 minutes. And then right at the last death, as though it was the last kick, Mark McGee has a solo goal to make it 4-0. So we overcome the barrier of the 3-1 defeat at Reading to move forward into the next round of the League Cup. We now have an away match at Ipswich at Portman Road. 13,000 in the game. Ipswich now managed by John Duncan, an ex-Spurs player, and they've got some big names from other teams: David Linnigan, Mark Stockwell, Mel Thompson. They've brought in another Dutch lad, Romero Zandervan, John Walk, Jason Dozel. John Walk, a dangerous player of Liverpool, of course. And David Lowe on the left side, another talented youngster they've brought in through their own ranks. Jim Smith has now got Budgie Burridge in goal, and otherwise the team's unchanged. But Gary Bazil and Benny Christensen are the substitutes. It's a good game, always good football from Ipswich. And on 12 minutes, John Walk makes it 1-0 for Ipswich. And it's a penalty. Kevin Dillon brought John Walk himself down in the penalty area, and he stands up and takes the pen himself. So 1-0 on 12. And then just as it looks like we're settling into the game, the dangerous young winger that they've just put into the first team, David Lowe, makes it 2-0 on 36 minutes. After half time, that's Mickey Quinn. That's a good action shot of Mickey Quinn. And we after half time, we look as though we're going to give it a go, and we do. And we huff and we puff. We hit the post, hit the bar. Then on 82 minutes, Mark McGee gets one of his specials in. But unfortunately, it's not enough. We're still struggling to get an equaliser. So we lose 2-1, and we're now standing 5th in the league, which respectable, but not good enough. Not good enough, especially as Smith's declared intent with the players he brought in was to get promotion. We're now back to St James's Park, the game against Bradford City, and Jim Smith plays an unchanged team. 18,800 at the game. Bradford City, their manager Terry Yorroth, the old Leeds player, midfielder, whose daughter, of course, very famous on TV even now. Some good players in the lead in the Bradford team. One or two who we know of course, is that Brian Tinnion, now our fullback, is their fullback. They just bought him. Lee Sinnott, Peter Jackson, of course, who we bought from them, and we sold him back to them. Lee Duxbury from Manchester United. Paul Jewell from Wigan, who went back to Wigan as a manager and made quite a name for himself in recent years. Tony Adcock and Jimmy Quinn. Jimmy Quinn, an Irish winger who was very dangerous. It's a good game, but sadly, nobody looks like they're going to score. Woodwork, crossbar, they can hit everything but the net. And then just to the last kick of the game, a Mark McGee special, and bang, we win 1-0. And that's us up into 3rd place after that, which is getting people excited, to say the least. We now at home to Blackburn Rovers. They're mid-table as well. They're not far from us, and we're hoping that it's a Wednesday night game. 20,700 at the game, and Jim Smith relies on the same team: Burridge, Anderson, Stimson, Dillon, Scott, Christensen, Gallagher, Brock, Quinn, McGee, and Liam O'Brien. Blackburn come with the manager Don Mackay, the tough Scottish midfielder, who's their manager now, and they have some good big names, former big names in the side: Keith Hill, David May, Mark Atkins, Colin Hendry is a name, Scottish defender who we get to know quite well, and another name suddenly introduced in their midfield called Scott Sellers, which is a name we get to know very well fairly soon. Simon Garner, Frank Stapleton, who they brought in from Forest, and Andy Kennedy, who's been with them for a while. But they're a tidy side, but shouldn't be troubling us really. We go into the game quite positively. It's a good first half, and Mickey Quinn on 10 minutes makes it 1-0. That's how it is at half time, and we come out second half even Steven, and Mark McGee on 53 minutes makes it 2. But then Kennedy, the Blackburn striker, winger, makes it 2-1 on 56 minutes. So for the next 15 minutes or so, it's a backs to the wall operation for Newcastle, and they hold out and get a 2-1 victory. And as the Gallagher faithful go home happy. We're now away to we have a game at Brighton, and they've been regarded as one of the finds of the season because they're playing very well. And the manager's a man called Graham Pooley, not the manager, the referee's a man called Graham Pooley from Bishop Stortford, another referee who in those days was regarded as a personality man, because he used to speak, which was unusual for refs in those days. Anyway, Brighton, Barry Lloyd is their manager, former player as well, and they've got a decent side. Names like Chivers and Bissett in the back, Ian Chapman, Keith Dublin, Alan Kirbishley from West Ham, who became quite a famous manager, Dean Wilkins, Paul Wood, Kevin Bremer, and Gary Nelson. And as I say, a tidy side that's been regarded as the find of the season because they're beating people who shouldn't. Jim Smith got the luxury of sending out an unchanged team again, hold Liam O'Brien in the side again, and because they're looking positive when he's there. And lo and behold, positive we are, because 25 minutes, Mickey Quinn's made it 1-0, and we're playing very well. Brighton don't look like they're going to score. After half time, the game's swimming along. Looks like it's going to go to a 1-0, but that was discounting Mickey Quinn, because on 67 minutes, suddenly in the penalty area, out of nowhere, he makes it 2-0, and the game's settling down to a 2-0, and everybody's happy about that. Well, Mickey Quinn makes them even more happy, because just before the end, 87 minutes, and we're 3-0, and that's a win that takes with the second place, which is great, and one hopes that it'll reflect on the for the next game. We have a home game against Port Vale, and Port Vale are nowhere in terms of the league, and we're hoping that that's where they stay. But 17,800 at the game. Many were expecting more now that we're in second place, and we have the luxury again. Jim Smith sending out an unchanged team: Burridge, Ranson, Stimpson, Dylan Scott, Christensen, Faraday, Brock, Quinn, and McGee, and O'Brien. And Port Vale have got John Rudge, an old player of theirs, as their manager, and one or two names that are famous in football. Ron Futcher in their defence, Neil Aspin, Dean Glover, Ian Miller, Robbie Earle from Wimbledon, Darren Beckford, and Nicky Cross from Leicester. Playing tidy football, but they shouldn't be troubling us. But and it looks like it's all going swimmingly. 10 minutes, Mark Gee puts with 1-0 in the lead, and we sail into half time at 1-0, looking comfortable. And then after half time, we're controlling the half. There's no panic, and on 55 minutes, Mickey Quinn makes it 2-0, and everybody's ready to cheer another victory. But unfortunately, I haven't mentioned Ron Earle as a dangerous striker. On 83 minutes, he makes it 2-1, and I haven't mentioned Ron Futcher as a one to watch. In the very last kick of the game, they get a corner, and Ron Futcher heads in an equaliser. So the 17,800 go home very disappointed at the 2-2 draw. I have to say, the Gallagher corner, the several thousand who go home on the 10-minute flag to get their buses and trains home, they'd have to wait till they got home to find that score. anyway, we're disappointed with that, and it knocks me down to third in the league, and we now come back to West Bromwich Albion at home in the League Cup, the third round of the League Cup, and we want to progress, but what you want to do and do is with Newcastle 22,600 at the game, and Jim Smith has an unchanged team, and West Bromwich Albion have Brian Talbot, ex midfielder from name it Ipswich, really. Has a good side. Chris White, Steve Parton, Brian Talbot himself, Tony Ford, Bernard McNally, Gary Robson, John Thomas, and a man called Don Goodman, who we get to know because he comes up to play with our near neighbours, and it's a good game for the league, and it's end to end, and either side could have scored, but unfortunately, it's on 38 minutes. It's West Brom that scores. They're dangerous defender from a corner. 38 minutes, Chris White scores a beautiful headed goal, and that's West Brom 1-0 in the lead at half time. We huff and we puff, but we can't blow the door down, and 1-0 it stays. So that's the end of our sojourn into the League Cup, because this particular round, the third round, is not two legs; it's only one leg. So we get dumped out of the league fairly quickly. We now have a game at home to Port Vale, and it's 2-2. We should the game. I've already talked about the Port Vale game, but again, it's us not.
I'll hit the ads, George, because you must have your paperwork that you need to get in order. So here's the ads.
That's okay.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm, and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours, and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video, and click share to share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at NUFCmatters.com.
Okay, welcome back to Those Were the Days, season 1989-90. And George, where are we next?
We're away to West Brom. Yeah, I'd picked the Port Vale paper up a second time. Sorry about that. It was a 2-2 draw, which was disappointing. But we're now off to West Bromwich Albion. And bearing in mind that they've just beaten us in the League Cup, there's some trepidation about this one. And we're third in the league, and a win would be great. 12,000 in the Hawthorns. Jim Smith, again, very loyal, sends on his unchanged team. And West Bromwich Albion manager Brian Talbot plays virtually the same team that he played in the League Cup that beat were. There are one or two interesting additions, names to look at, though. One of their substitutes is a man called Sam Allardyce, which we get to know quite well. And of course, Don Goodman, who went to our neighbours down the road, still is their dangerous attacker, dangerous centre forward. And it's an entertaining game, is all I can say. And within 4 minutes, we're in the lead, which is great. Something we couldn't do in the League Cup, score against them. And it's an own goal. It's a blast from Kevin McGee, from Mark McGee, and it hits their forward Gary Robson and trickles into the bottom of the net. So we're 1-0 in the league. Don Goodman, of all people, equalises on 17 minutes. And then on 21 minutes, Gary Brazil slots in another for us. So we go in at half-time 2-1 and looking quite good. We come out for the second half, and it's obvious from the kick-off that Newcastle are going to have a go for this game. And the game's taken by the scruff of the neck by Kevin Brock again, tidy midfielder. 66 minutes, he slots in a free kick, and then he lays on a one for Mark McGee in 76 minutes, and then another nice free kick and a header from Lean O'Brien. And we come home from West Brom with a 5-1 win, which cements our place at third in the league, which is quite a turnaround from a team that beat us in the League Cup just a few days before. We then come home to a home match against Middlesbrough, a derby with our Teesside mates. 23,300 at the game, and once again Jim Smith picks an unchanged team. He has to change Liam O'Brien though halfway through because he gets a knock and Gary Brazil comes on. Bruce Rioch, the manager at Middlesbrough, great character, made his name at Derby County really, and they have a side we know: Kevin Poole, Gary Parkinson, Colin Cooper, Tony Mowbray, Alan Kerrigan, Trevor Putney, Mark Proctor, dangerous winger. Similarly, Stuart Ripley, Mark Brennan, Alan Cornfoot, and Bernie Slaven, dangerous Scottish forward. It goes off 100 miles an hour like most of the derbies do. And Mark McGee, within 2 minutes, it makes it 1-0 to us. And it looks like it's in for a win here. But then Mark Proctor, 24 minutes, makes it 1-1. And then just after half-time, Mark Brennan makes it 2-1 to the Borough. So we're struggling, really. And we're looking for a saviour. And, of course, it's Mickey Quinn on 85 minutes. It's 2-2, so we get a point, and it cements our position in third in the league. It's encouraging, at least, to say that we're staying there, we're sticking there, and we're off to London to West Ham now, and not an easy place to go, but that's where we're off to. By this time, Jim Smith. I don't think he must look at the team sheet because it's the same team again. And 25,800 at the game at Upton Park. Lou Macari's the manager at West Ham, the ex-Manchester United star and Scotland star. And and Phil Parks, our manager, Steve Potts, Julian Dix, the hard man, Alvin Martin, defender, Liam Brady, who they've just bought from Arsenal, Kevin Keane, Stuart Slater, Mark Ward, and Eamon Dolan. Substitute is a young man called David Kelly for West Ham. And a good football game, but not if you're looking for goals, because this was one of those games where they could be playing now, and I don't think they would have scored. When you read about this game, there's not even a mention of a goalkeeper making a save. It's so stuck in the middle of the park. But a 0-0 draw for us means we cement our place at third in the league, which is very satisfying for the Magpie Pie faithful. We now have an away game at Barnsley, and not the easiest of places to go. They're having a manager at the moment. They've just sacked their manager, but they've got a team of talented players, some of them quite well known. Steve Cooper, David Curry, a talented forward, and on the other side, Steve Agnew, who we get to know, Ian Banks, that they got from Oldham, who was playing well at those days, and the big defenders, Mark Shotton, Mark Smith. It's not going to be an easy game. This is a team, although they're not going to be challenging promotion, they're going to be hanging on to their place in the division as hard as they can. We're third in the league and hoping to get something out of it, but first half fairly drab, 0-0, and then in midway through the second half, David Curry, who was the most dangerous player, makes it 1-0 to Barnsley, and it has the look of a 1-0 defeat. But then, right at the death, 87 minutes, none other than Mickey Quinn pops up to make it 1-1. So we get a point out of it, and again, cements our place in third place, which is very comforting. So we're now at home to Sheffield United, and now they're one of the outsiders for promotion, according to the pundits, that is. And we come home to St James's against Sheffield on the 20. By now, the fact that we're thirds now beginning to get through to fans. I think 28,000 now at the game, and Saturday in November, John Burridge is in goal. It's the same Jim Smith team: Burridge, Ransom, Stimson, Dylan Scott, Christensen, Gallagher, Brock, Quinn, McGee, and O'Brien. Wayne Faraday is a substitute, and Sheffield United still have Dave Bassett as their manager, and with a range of talented players who are pushing them higher up the league than people imagined there would be. One or two notables, like that centre forward Brian Dean, big strong bloke, caused a lot of bother. Ian Bryce and John Gannon, Bob Booker, Wilf Rostron, who in his earlier days played for our friends down the road, and a tidy goalkeeper in Colin Hill. Sheffield United are going for it. They're giving us as good as they've got, but a mistake by the goalkeeper, Tracy rather, on 7 minutes, and John Gallagher's there to tap in, and that looks like how we're going to half time. But then Mickey Quinn on 37 minutes latches onto a through ball from Kevin Brock, and it's 2-0, and that's how we go in at half time, and that's how it ends, because the second half is end to end, but never looked like anybody was going to score any more goals. So that's great. It cements us where we want to be, at the top of the league, challenging for a promotion place. So now we are at home to Oldham Athletic in the Zenith Data Systems Cup. The Football League doing all sorts of things to raise money, but never mind. Oldham, not a side we've already beaten, and not a side that should worry us too much. We've got one or two dangerous players in Andy Ritchie, Scott McGarvey, Neil Adams. You know, it's a tidy side, and of course they've got the likes of Dennis Irwin from Manchester United in defence, and Willie Donaghy in defence from Manchester City. Jim Smith sends out an unchanged team with Faraday in Brazil as the substitutes, and the public response to this Zenith Data Cup wasn't overwhelming. 6,000 at the game, which is a crowd that would get lost in St James's Park. Anyway, it's a reasonably tidy game, and man of the moment, Mickey Quinn, on 4 minutes puts we in the lead, and we never look like losing that lead. And it stays that way all the way through to nearly the end. And then on 88 minutes, the same Mickey Quinn makes it 2-0. So we make progress in the Zenith Data Cup, which is, whether it's good or not, it's another matter. Anyway, we now have an away game at Leeds in the league. And it would be nice to win this one, because we could actually knock on the door of second place. And so off we go to Leeds for a tough game. 31,000 at the game. Well, nearly 32,000 actually. Howard Wilkinson, their manager. A side of people who are really well known: Mervyn Dane, Mel Sterland, Noel Blake, Chris Fairclough, Vinnie Jones now is at Leeds from Wimbledon, Gordon Strachan, David Batley, Andy Williams, Bobby Davidson and Ian Baird. And they're a tidy side. Jim Smith, well, don't even need to look at the team sheet, because it's the same one, except that he puts John Anderson and Wayne Faraday in as substitutes. It's end-to-end stuff, 0-0 at half-time. No side, neither side look like they're going to score. After half-time, it gets a bit more lively, and both sides hit woodwork, and then on 72 minutes, there's a free kick, and Ian Baird steps up to take it, and sadly, bang, that's it. We're 1-0 down. Not a disaster, but a bit disappointing. However, it didn't knock off third place, but as I say, the win would have made it second place, not third place. And we're now off, have a home game against Oxford United, well, this is a formality, isn't it? At 16,600 at the match. Unchanged side with Sweeney and Anderson as substitutes. Oxford come, we've just played them. Brian Horton still their manager, and a range of good professionals like Steve Foster, Les Phillips, Mickey Lewis. Steve McLaren is a name that people will know, and that's how it is. Paul Simpson, Mark Steen, a dangerous centre forward that bought from Coventry, and John Durnan, a dangerous winger who's of their own quality. Game's quite a tidy game, quite a nice game. Unfortunately, on 21 minutes, Cyril Evans puts Oxford in the lead. However, 35 minutes, Mark Stimpson from a corner pulls us back into it, and we go in 1-1 at half time. Then after half time, we seem to lose our way a little bit, and Les Phillips on 46 minutes, about his second kick of the game, really, he's on, and Benny Christensen gives away a penalty with a silly handball, and 46 minutes, Oxford are level, and are 2-1 in the lead. And we have a go at them, huffing and puffing, and unfortunately, by doing that, leave ourselves wide open when the dangerous midfielder, Paul Simpson, slots in another one in a 3-1 in the lead. Well, it's backs to the wall for Oxford after that. And then on 88 minutes, Mickey Quinn gets a second for us, and it's 3-2. So the last 5 minutes are mayhem, but we couldn't get an equaliser, and disappointing, because that would have a win there would have put us up to second, and instead we end back bumping down to fourth because of the defeat. However, such is life. We now in the next round of the Zenith Data Systems Cup against Derby. Crowd 6,800. So the crowd, see what the crowd think of the Zenith Data Systems Cup. And we play Derby. It's a good game and a nice game. We have the luxury of an unchanged team. And Arthur Cox brings his talented Derby side there. The way I get this data from this site, I love the way that sometimes they go into not just giving you the two names of the players, but their full name, like Peter Leslie Shilton. I mean, do we need to know that? But never mind, it's what they do. Some of them are quite strange. Good side: Paul Williams, Steve Cross, Mark Wright, talented centre back, Trevor Hibbert, Phil G, Dean Saunders, a dangerous player from a big career, and of course leading the line, Paul Goddard, who Arthur Cox got from us, and it's a good football game, which usually with Derby it is, and we Liam O'Brien puts us in the lead on 26, and on 33 Steve Cross equalises, and it stays like that till 90 minutes, so we're into extra time. 95 minutes, Steve Cross scores again and puts them in the lead 2-1, and John Gallagher scores to make it 2-2, and then a blistering drive from Mark McGee hits Steve Cross on the back of the head and balloons over the top of their goalkeeper, and we end up winning 3-2 after extra time. And so we make progress in that trophy, which certainly the crowd aren't too bothered. I don't seem to be. The next game is an away game at Stoke City. We want to try and get something out of this one because we've slipped the fourth, and that's the lowest we've been for most of the season. This is 26th of December. It's a Christmas game. My birthday, by the way. So me, probably above everybody else, is hoping for a win for my birthday at the Britannia Stadium. 15,000 at the game, and Jim Smith has the luxury of playing an unchanged team again. Stoke City, managed by Alan Ball, the ex-World Cup winner, with a good side: Peter Fox, Lee Stanford, Cliff Carr, Chris Kamara, who's a name people will know, Carl Beeston, Lee Fowler, Gary Hackett, Wayne Biggins, Tony Ellis, and Carl Saunders. Carl Saunders, a very dangerous forward, and it's a good game. It's a bit of blood and thunder, like sometimes there is at Stoke City. I don't know what it is about the atmosphere at the Britannia Stadium, but it does seem to be louder than other places you go. However, we're doing all right. In fact, we're doing very, very all right, because on 6 minutes from a corner, Kevin Scott scores one of his very few goals to put us in the lead. Go in at half time 1-0, and we seem to be sailing to a 1-0 win when the dangerous Wayne Biggins pops up in the penalty area and makes it 1-1. Then right at the end, right with the last kick of the game, there's a corner, and their centre-back, Carl Beeston, scores and makes it 2-1. And there's no way we can get back in that game. The sad thing is, not only are we not fourth anymore, that result knocks us down to sixth, which is the lowest we've been the whole season, which is very disappointing. Next, we're away to Swindon. Now, another away game, and people are wondering whether or not the travel sickness has got hold of it. So we're away to Swindon town, and people are hoping that we can get something out of this one, because Swindon shouldn't be challenging us. 11,000 at the game, and the Swindon manager, Ozzy Ordeal, is named to conjure with. and they've got a good side of former First Division players: Frank Digby, David Kersley, Colin Calderwood, who he knows the coach, Newcastle with Chris Hughton, John Gittins, Paul Borden, Alan McLaughlin, Tommy Jones, Ross McLaren, Steve Foley, Steve White, and Duncan Shearer. And Jim Smith, again, the luxury of putting out an unchanged team. It's all going okay. In fact, better than okay, because just on the half-time whistle, Mickey Quinn nips in and not in a corner. So half-time we're 1-0 up. And that's how it looks like it's going to stay. We're going to get a win. But lo and behold, last kick of the game again, Duncan Shearer, the dangerous forward, floats in a what looks like an innocuous cross and ends up getting caught by the wind or something, but it deceives Budgie, and we're 1-1 right at the death. But as I say, we're still 6th, and that's not where we want to be. So we're now at home to Wolves. They're one of the teams that might be challenging. Good side, but we still should be up for it. If we're going to do anything in this league, we should be up for this. Jim Smith, he's got one change to make. He brings in Darren Bradshaw into the team because of an injury. Otherwise, it's the same team. Wolves now have Graham Turner, talented manager, in place, and have the reputation of playing good football. And they've bought a number of players like Mark Venus from Ipswich, Robbie Dennison from Middlesbrough, whose father was former Middlesbrough manager. And they've got a young centre forward called Steve Bull, who was about to set the football world alight with his goal scoring, and going to have to watch him. Anyway, we come back, and people are, well, it's 22,000 at the game. People expecting to make progress again, and unfortunately, that's not what happens. And what we have is a display of absolute terror at centre forward from Steve Bull. On 49 minutes, he scores his first one just after half time. 55, he gets his second one. 58, he gets his third one. Then Kevin Brock pulls one back from a free kick for us on 73. Then on 75 minutes, 4-1, and Steve Bull has scored a lot. And we never were in it once he took over. He terrorised our back line, and there was no surprise when they ran out winners. It was disappointing, was putting it mildly. We're at third round of the FA Cup now, and we're off to Hull City. And again, it's a one that people think we should win. 10,700 at the game. Jim Smith back to the full side, injuries sorted. Mark Stimpson's back at left back, and manager of Hull City now is Stan Turnant, who is old Burnley player, another northeastern lad, and they have a strong side, a good football side as well, with Steve Terry, Richard Jobson, Billy Askew, Steve Doyle, Gareth Roberts, Andy Payton, and Peter Swan. When Andy Payton and Richard Jobson and Steve Terry all came from Burnley with Stan Turnant. You can read the link straight away. And Peter Swan, who used to play for Sheffield Wednesday. Jim Smith sends out an unchanged team. We want something from this game so we can get back into a fighting position, not just in the cup, to give it a boost to fight in the league. And it's a good game. The end-to-end stuff, but nobody's scoring a goal in the first half. Same in the second half, and then, lo and behold, 67 minutes, a beautiful through ball by Kevin Brock, and Liam O'Brien's on the end of it at 67 minutes to make it 1-0. So we're through the third round of the FA Cup. That's something anyway. And we're now back to Newcastle to a game against Leicester City, and we want to win this one. We really do need to start climbing this league if we're going to make an impression. Leicester, a tidy football side, always going to give us a good game, and that's what happens. Same team from Jim Smith. Slight changes with the substitutes with Paul Sweeney and John Gallagher. David Pleat still Leicester manager, and their teams are virtually unchanged from the team that we played at Leicester with Kevin Campbell, David Oldfield, Gary Mills, Tommy Wright, all names, Steve Walsh, all names that are very well known in football. And it's a great game. It's a proper game of football, but also it's a goal scoring game. And Mark McGee sets it off. 5 minutes for us. 19 minutes, Tommy Wright scores for them. 38 minutes, Steve Walsh makes it 2-1 for them. 45 minutes, right on half time, Mickey Quinn makes it 2-2 for half time. And it looks like it might stay that way, but no, they come out and clearly Leicester going to go for it. And Gary Pallister, Matt McAllister rather, makes it 3-2 to them. Mickey Quinn, John Gallagher pulls one back for us. And then the Leicester substitute, Kevin Campbell, that they just brought in, scores for them. So we're now 4-4. And Mickey Quinn on 86 minutes, bang, it's 5-4 Newcastle. Great game, really good game to be at because it was quite exciting. 21,000 at the game. And
Roy Aitken's debut.
It was indeed. Sorry, Steve, you're absolutely right. And he, I think that was one of Smith's best signings, in my opinion. But never mind, that's my jaundiced view of the world. So we're now away to Oldham, and hopefully that we'll get something out of this league game. But Oldham aren't going to lie down and let we walk over them. Joe Royal's got a tidy side, and they dig their heels in, and it's Jim Smith sends unchanged team with Roy Aitken still in his place, and 11,000 at Boundary Park. Not the prettiest of games, but panic for us. Andy Ritchie, the dangerous centre forward, scores on 66 minutes, and then 74, and Mark McGee scores a brilliant goal to make it 1-1, and that's enough to shift us up the league a little bit. We're up to 6 again now, and going in the right direction. So we now have an away game at Middlesbrough, and it's in the Zenith Data Systems Cup semi-final of the Northern area, and we go to Middlesbrough, and at least they get a crowd for this, 16,900. Bruce Rioch's still the manager, and their team, full of names people know: Colin Cooper, Tony Mowbray, Stuart Ripley, Mark Proctor, Paul Kerr, Mark Brennan, Peter Davenport, and Bernie Slaven. Jim Smith has the luxury of fielding an unchanged team, and it's a nothing game in the first half, all in the middle of the field. So no surprise when we go in at 0-0. And it looks like it's going to be a 0-0 at the end. And then just before the final whistle, there's a free kick on the edge of our box, and Colin Cooper, their fullback, steps up, and bang, it's 1-0 to Middlesbrough. And that's the end of our Zenith Data Cup semi-final. We have to think about the next game, which is the next round, 4th round of the FA Cup. And we're at Reading. Quite often give us a tough time. 11,900 at Elm Park. Their manager's a name we know as well. Ian Porterfield now is manager of Reading. And some talented players in that team. Steve Francis, Martin Hicks, Mark Whitlock, Mark Gooden, Mick Tate, Michael Julk, Steve Moran, and Trevor Senior. Trevor Senior is the man we need to watch. If we're going to have difficulty, that's where it's going to come from. Jim Smith has the luxury of sending out the same team, except Kevin Dillon's now one of the substitutes. And we lose our way in the first half hour, and Lyndon Jones scores on 29 minutes for Reading. And 38 minutes, Mark McGee scores for us. And then the very same Trevor Senior I've just talked about scores just before half-time for them. And right on the dot of half-time, Mickey Quinn makes it 2-2. So it's a good first half, attractive game. Everybody's hoping the second half will be the same, except the result might be different. So we come out for the second half, and we're given a go at this. That's clearly Jim Smith's told them to have a go at this. And on 71 minutes, Mark McGee bangs it in, and it's 3-2, and everybody thinks, well, this is it. Because Reading don't really look like they're going to score again. And then right at the death, Trevor Senior gets in a beautiful ball in the centre, and Michael Julks heads it in. So we end up with a 3-3 draw, which is a bit disappointing, to say the least. So on the Wednesday, we have to come back to St James's for a replay. And it's 26,000 at the game now, which is interesting that the fans have woken up and got interested because it's the FA Cup. Same team from Jim Smith, and it's similarly with Ian Porterfield, the same 11 again. So you've got the same 22 players on the pitch, and we'll see what happens. But it's going our way. 11 minutes, Mark McGee scores. 20 minutes, he scores a blinder from nowhere, and it's 2-0. And then after half time, it's our game. Mickey Quinn on 71 minutes makes it 3. And then just to make people nervous, Trevor Senior, the dangerous player, scores on 87 and sets us jangling. Then David Robertson, who's come on as a substitute, makes it 4 for Newcastle. So we beat Reading in the FA Cup 4th round, 4-1. So satisfying victory. Let's hope it gives us the confidence to do stuff in the league, because our next game, of course, is a home game against our near neighbours, Sunderland, and they're playing better and slowly climbing the league, but they shouldn't be a problem to us. So we got Sunderland at home, and now the crowd's awake. 31,000 at the Derby match. We're 6th in the table, and a win would certainly shoot up the table because it's very close. Jim Smith, lucky enough to be able to send out the same side, changes the substitutes. John Anderson is substitute, and Paul Sweeney. However, Paul Sweeney goes on because Kevin Brock gets a knock. But Dennis Smith's their manager. Tony Norman, John Kay, Paul Hardiman, Paul Bracewell, Agibola, John McPhail, Gary Owers, Gordon Armstrong, Eric Gates, Marco Gabbiadini. You remember I said about the names, Steve, that these people tend to elaborate a little bit. Well, yeah. They don't just say Eric Gates. It's Eric Lazenby Gates. Would you like to know? I really enjoy that. It's a quirk of this particular publication, which is I'm relieved for it because it gives me nearly all my information. All I have to do is to make sure I know what the game was like, and I remember what this one was like because I was there. It was a typical derby game, and end-to-end stuff, lots of blood and thunder, lots of woodwork shaved and hit, and 0-0 at half time. It was 0-0, could have been 4-4 if they'd taken their chances. But it's an exciting game to be happening. Just after half time, Marco Gabbiadini pops up in 49 minutes and scores an individual goal to put Sunderland in the lead. And there's anxiety amongst the 31,000 now, particularly in the Gallagher corner where I am. And but Newcastle aren't giving the game away and driven on by Roy Aitken, you can see. And Mark McGee on 77 minutes gets the chance to hit one of these screamers from the edge of the box, and he does, and he makes it 1-1. And that's how it stayed. The last 10, 15 minutes were absolute mayhem, but nobody was going to could score, and we end up with a 1-1. We're now away to Portsmouth. We got to try winning some of these games, and Portsmouth's a place where we could go and get something. But Frank Burrows is their manager now. He's got a similar team that we played before. Knight and goal, Warren Neal, Gary Stevens, Graham Hogg, Mike Fillery, Kevin Ball of Roker Park fame, Steve Wigley, Mick Hazard, they've got from Spurs, Mark Chamberlain, Kenny Black, and Guy Whittingham from Leicester. So they're not going to be pushing for promotion, but they're a dangerous side on the day. Jim Smith, absolute, again, the opportunity to play an unchanged team. And he is, and that's exactly what he does. We go and the first half is ours. We're really dominating this game. Then on 40 minutes, Mick Quinn against his old side makes it 1-0, and we go in at 1-0, and we're thinking, well, we're going to get the points this time, but no such luck. 82 minutes, and Jimmy Gilligan, the dangerous little winger, slides in and makes it 1-1. And the 14,000 Pompey fans go home singing the chimes. That keeps us steady in 7th, but that's not where we want to be. We want to be better than 7th, and so we now have a home game against Manchester United, and this is going to be tough. There's no question about that. Manchester United are regarded as one of the champions elect, playing very well. Alec Ferguson still their manager, talented team. Leighton, Anderson, Steve Bruce, Gary Pallister, Mike Dukesbury, who was substituted by Paul Ince later in the game, Lee Martin, Brian McLear, Mick Phelan, Mark Robbins, Mark Hughes, and Danny Wallace. It's a good game. Always is against them. 31,800 at the game, and it's the FA Cup 5th round. So it's got people interested, to put it mildly. And we let Mark Robbins in on 19 minutes to give them a 1-0 lead to half-time. And then just after half-time, Mark McGee scores a penalty. And then 59 minutes, Danny Wallace scores. 63 minutes, Kevin Scott scores. It looks like we're going to get a 2-2 draw. But Brian McClare, 78 minutes, makes it 3-2. So Manchester United then were interested in the FA Cup, which is sad, but we want promotion. We want to get out of this league if we possibly can. And we're away to Sheffield United, isn't the easiest place to go. But we go to Bramall Lane, 21,000 in the crowd. And by now we've slipped to 8th because of other results. Jim Smith has now got Tommy Wright back in goal. He's left Budgie out because he was injured, and otherwise he's got the same side that he picks. Sheffield United, Dave Bassett is still their manager, and they have the same strong set of lads playing for them. Brian Dean, a big dangerous centre forward, but he's got an even bigger man beside him causing all sorts of mayhem. called Billy Whitehurst, and the two together are a nightmare to play against for defenders. The defenders know they're going to get knocked about. There's no question about that. Anyway, it's a good game. We get off to a good start. 18 minutes, and there's a Mark McGee cannonball which hits the defender called Mark Morris, and balloons over the goalkeeper into the net. And it looks like that's how it's going to be. We go in 1-0, and all the way through the second half, that's how it looks like it's going to stay. And then 87 minutes, they get a corner, and all the big blokes pile up, and the corner lands to Brian Dean, and bang, we're 1-1, which was a disappointment because it looks like we were going to get away with a nice win there, but didn't happen. So we're 8th now, and that's disaster time. We're now at home to Bournemouth, who give us the run around at their place. Now 15,000 at the game, which reflects the bad results we've had. A couple of bad results we've had. Jim Smith, same team, leaves Tommy Wright in goal, and otherwise an unchanged team. Bournemouth still managed by Harry Radnott. Same, virtually the same team that we played. He's bought another West Ham player that went to the team called Kevin Bond, who obviously he knows very well, and Gavin Peacock's now a fixture in their side. George Lawrence, Paul Molden, Luther Bliss at the centre forward, the boat, a tidy side. It's evening kick-off. It's but 15,000 reflects, I think, the way people feel about our previous results, and it's quite an entertaining game. And the first half is 0-0. Looked like it could stay that way as well. But after the halftime whistle, after the halftime started, the game's taken over by none other than Mickey Quinn. He gets into a period of runs that have got the Bournemouth defence running always, and so it's no surprise when he goes through and he lays the ball back from the byline, and John Anderson picks it up, and bang, we're 1-0 on 53 minutes. And on 59 minutes from a corner, Nicky Quinn nips in, and it's 2-0. And then on 89 minutes, just before the end, an individual goal from Mickey Quinn, and we win this game 3-0. And that's pushes us up to 6th in the table, which is at least going in the right direction. We then have a home game against Barnsley. Barnsley given us a bad time at their place, but this is a game we must win if we're going to do anything at all in this league. And 19,000 at the game, and Jim Smith has the luxury of sending out an unchanged team again. Barnsley, Melon Machin is their manager, and I think I said when we played them the last time, they have some big names who are on the way down, like Paul Fucher, Paul Cross, Carl Taylor, Ian Banks, Steve Agnew, who we get to know, Steve Cooper, and Lee Glover, a left winger from Charlton, who very dangerous player in their side. So first half is sets off, and it's clear from the off that Newcastle want this game. Don't let Barnsley settle at all. And from a corner, John Anderson nips in on 12 minutes and gets another of his rare goals. Then on 22, same doors, corner, and Kevin Scott makes it 2. Then on 34, a free kick from Roy Aitken, and we're 3 up. And on 40 minutes, Steve Agnew scores a 1 for them, and we're 3-1. So we go in at 3-1, and people are expecting similar in the second half. Well, it's not quite the same, but it's we've got control, and we get a penalty because of a foul by Paul Cross, and Mark McGee makes it 4-1. So a result which now lifts up to 5th in the table. So we're heading in the right direction. So here we go. off to Hull City. No, Hull City. Come to us. Yes, that's right. And again, another one we want to win. We must win if we're going to do something in the league. Jim Smith got the luxury of an unchanged side, which makes interesting reading, actually. Tommy Wright, Kevin Scott, Mark Stimson, Roy Aitken, Anderson, Ranson, Brock, Dillon, Mickey Quinn, Mark McGee and John Gallagher. Actually, they've got that team like that, and I'm quite convinced that John Anderson was actually the right back, not centre-half, and Kevin Scott was the centre-half, but why they've got it like that, I don't know. Typographical, maybe. Hull City, Dan Turner, their manager, now really into the job. He brings another ex-Burnley player in as goalkeeper, Ian Hesford, and Nicky Brown, Malcolm Shotton, Wayne Jobs, Steve Terry, Richard Jobson, Steve Doyle, Gareth Roberts, Dave Bamber, and Andy Payton. A good football side and some tidy players in there. It's an evening match, 21,000 at the game. And it's a fairly even first half. Martin McGee on 41 minutes makes it 1-0. So we go in to half time 1-0. And second half is more even, and it looks as though that's the way it's going to stay. But then, unfortunately for them, Steve Terry, who's in the middle of their back line, upends Mark McGee in the box. The same Mark McGee gets up and makes it 2-0 from the penalty spot, and that pushes up into fourth place, which is going in the right direction. We're now heading towards an away game at Watford, which is not going to be an easy game. It's a one which would like to win, but 12,000 at the game. Watford now got Colin Lee as their manager, but the names in the team haven't changed. Courton, Williams, Holdsworth, Glenn Roder, Jason Drysdale, Lee Richardson, Rod Thomas, Glyn Hodges, Willie Falconer, Gary Prentice, and Paul Wilkinson. A dangerous side. Jim Smith, he's got the luxury of another unchanged team. 12,000 at the game, and I wish I could say it was a good game. It wasn't. It was a 0-0, and from beginning to end, they could have played for another 90 minutes. I don't think either side would have scored a goal. Can't even remember a shot being saved, a real shot being saved. It just was all in the middle of the field. So a 0-0, but the sort of 0-0 you don't want to see, because it was really.
Glenn Roder, the poster boy there on the programme.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Which is one of the reasons I picked it, actually. I had forgotten that he was at Watford, Steve, to be honest.
Yeah.
And anyway, we're back home against Ipswich Town. Now, Ipswich Town are outsiders for promotion, but they're playing good football and people like them. And it's Jim Smith, unchanged team again, and John Duncan has a good side at Ipswich. Always good football from Ipswich, and he's got Craig Gale, Dave Lidingham, Mel Thompson, Mick Stockwell, Ian Redford, John Walk, dangerous centre forward, Simon Milton, David Lowe, Chris Kayumwa comes into their side. So they're a good football side, and it is a good football game. First half is end-to-end stuff, and there's only one chance in it, and unfortunately it's for Ipswich and Simon Milton rather. Their young forward makes it 1-0 to Ipswich, so we go in 1-0 down. And second half, whatever Smith said, whatever he put in the tea, Newcastle were a different team in the second half, led by none other than Mickey Quinn. He went into one of those phases where in the centre of the pitch, in the penalty area, he was unplayable. He had to be watched. And it's 51 minutes he scores, 85 minutes, and we get a 2-1 win. Now, the picture on the front of Jackie Milburn is to commemorate the fact that they opened the stand. They named the stand the Milburn stand, I think, is why it's there.
Yeah, was Laura there to do the unveiling? I think she was,
did.
wasn't she?
She did, yeah. And that was a funny period for Newcastle, because you know what else happened, Steve?
Go on.
Len White's testimonial.
Ah, right, okay.
But it wasn't played at St James's Park because the board wouldn't allow it. So it was organised by friends and supporters of Len White and was played at Whitley Bay.
Wow, unbelievable. I didn't know that.
I mean, there was a great push to try and reward Len White for his service, but the board wouldn't have it. And so the people said, well, all right, we'll do it ourselves. And they did. And Whitley Bay helped them with giving them the pitch free. And Sunderland supplied the team. And there was also some players from Middlesbrough came. So there was, of course, an old-fashioned Newcastle team against a team of all-stars, if you like, and made Len White quite a bit of money, which is quite good. But as I say, fancy, that was Newcastle in those days, I'm afraid. They didn't necessarily... Anyway, we beat Ipswich 2-1, and we're back up into fourth, which everybody's really pleased about. And we're now hoping that we can make a push for the promotion spot. Bradford City is the next game away, and John Docherty's still their manager. They've got a strong side with people we know, Peter Jackson, Mark Hazelwood, Brian Tinian, Gary Abbott, Alan Davis, Peter Costello, Ian McCall and Neil Woods, and a tidy side. Jim Smith, very boringly, but great really in some ways, plays an unchanged team. And at Valley Parade, there's 10,000 at the game. And it's end-to-end. It's a good game. 27 minutes, Gary Abbott puts them in the league. 38, Mark McGee equalises. 53 minutes, Brian Mitchell for them, 2. And then 63 minutes, an own goal by Hazelwood off a deflection off a Mark McGee shot. And then Neil Woods on 80 minutes makes it 3-2 to Bradford. Disappointing result, but a very, very good, entertaining game of football. We're still sitting in fourth. We need to do something about that, of course. And we're now off to another away game, which is not what we wanted really, but it's what the fixture list says. So we're off to Blackburn, and a good side, Blackburn, but we should at least be challenging with them. And Don Mackay is still their manager. They've now got Kevin Moran from Manchester United. Scott Sellers is a fixture in their team now. Howard Gale they've got from West Ham, and Frank Stapleton's playing for them. A tidy side, but a one that we should be beating. 13,000 in the crowd, and Jim Smith, just to be boring, plays an unchanged team, and it's a good game. It's a good game for the first half. It's 0-0. Second half, slightly different. They tend to get more into the game. There's a lot more chances usually created by Scott Sellers, through balls and dangerous crosses and free kicks. And on one of the free kicks, Kevin Moran, centre half they got from Manchester United, makes it 1-0. And then on 83 minutes, another one, Kevin Moran just repeats the dose, Scott Sellers free kick, and the 2-0, and that's the way we come home from there. And we're down to fifth, which is disappointing, but we're still in the hunt. We're still in the hunt. We now come home to a game against Brighton, who are a good side. 18,700 at the game. John Burridge is fit again and comes in for Wrighty in goal, and but otherwise it's an unchanged team from Jim Smith. Brighton, Hovalvi and Barry Lloyd still the manager, and a team exactly the same as we played at Brighton. Digweed, Crumpton, Chivers, Chapman, Bissett, Dublin, Alan Kirbishley, the ex-West Ham man who became a manager, Cudner, Williams, Kevin Bremner, and Sergei Gostomanov, who's was in their team. A good game at St James's, 0-0 at half time, and sadly it looked like it was going to drift into a 0-0 again at the end. But again, that maestro Mickey Quinn gets into the penalty area, knocked down, and John Gallagher makes it 1-0 on 83 minutes. And then on 90 minutes, another ball into the box, and Mickey Quinn himself makes it 2-0. So we get a 2-0 win, which pushes us up to 4th place. And sighs of relief all round, I think, is the best way to describe it. We now have a home against Plymouth Argyle, who have a good side, but again, typical of some of the lower league teams, that they have a mixture of people on their way out and people on their way up, and 16,500 at the game. Jim Smith, for boringly the same team again. By now, he's bought Billy Askew, though, who appears as a substitute. And John Gregory's team at Plymouth has lots of names we know: Alan Burrows, Adrian Burrows from Stoke, Nicky Marker from Tottenham, David Byrne, Kevin Hodges, Mark Flore, Tommy Chin, and Steve McCarthy, Sean McCarthy. But they shouldn't trouble us. They're not going to be pushing for the promotion. The best they'll be hoping for is to stay in a division. And it's not a bad game. Starts off with a disaster, of course. Typical Newcastle. Kevin Hodges, 2 minutes, and a poor pass by Kevin Scott, and Kevin Hodges on 2 minutes makes it 1-0. And just before half time, Mickey Quinn scores an equaliser, so we go in 1-1. Then after the second half, we come out, and it's Mark McGee's game after that. He's the one that suddenly becomes unplayable. And 3 minutes, he makes it 2-1. And then with a penalty near the end for 86 minutes, 3-1. So we beat Plymouth 3-1. And we've suddenly slipped into 3rd place. So people are getting more than excited now. It's good stuff. We're now away to Port Vale. Now, we should be beating Port Vale if we really are serious about getting promotion. At Vale Park, 10,200 at the game. Jim Smith has got Budgie back in goal, and John Rudge is their manager, and a team of former All-Stars, if you like: Tim Parker, Dean Glover, Darren Hughes, Ray Walker, Robbie Earle, Ron Jeffries, Paul Miller, and Darren Beckford. A dangerous team on the day, and it's... but it doesn't go that way. It goes our way. Within 20 minutes, Mickey Quinn's made it 1-0. 28 minutes, Mark McGee's made it 2-0. And that's how we go in at half time. And the game's end-to-end stuff looks like it's going to end that way. But then big, dangerous Robbie Earle on 82 minutes makes it 2-1. And for the last 10 minutes, it's back to the wall for Newcastle. But we win and consolidate our position in 3rd place. We're now at home to West Brom. Considering we've had some fantastic games with West Brom this year, people are interested to see if it's still the same, and that we can do it again. We got West Brom at home, and St James 20,000 in the crowd. Jim Smith has made one change. He's got Paul Sweeney in at left back because Mark Stimson has an injury. West Brom with Brian Talbot, the manager. Same team as we beat heavily in the previous game, on the cup game. Naylor, North, White, Hartney, Bradley, Shakespeare, Tony Ford, Brian McNally, Gary Habit, Gary Bannister, and Don Goodman. And it's a good game, good football game. John Anderson on 38 minutes from a corner puts win the lead. So, and Mickey Quinn on just after half time, 57 minutes, makes it 2-0. Looks like we're going to sail to a 2-0 win until that man Don Goodman pops up right at the last death and scores what we hope's a consolation. But the last 2-3 minutes were absolute mayhem in our penalty area. But it's clear we weren't going to give this one up, so we ended up with a 2-1, and that keeps us consolidated in third place. And we're in the right position. We're now off to Wolves, who'd given us a shellacking at St James's Park. That's the only way to describe it. 19,000 at the game at Molyneux. Unchanged team from Jim Smith, keeps Budgie in goal. Graham Turner's their manager. He's got a steady side now, and he's brought a new forward in called Nigel Vaughan, and he's getting good write-ups. He's from Blackpool. Andy Much, Steve Bull, that's the young centre forward who's really knocking the league about now. And another full name, Steve, Andy Richard brackets Andy Thompson. I mean, who wants to know that? I don't know. Maybe it's his mum and dad do. I don't know. Anyway, it's a tough game. Wolves are on the metal and giving us a lot of trouble through Bull. But the lads are up to it. Kevin Scott having a particularly good game. Oh, that's Steve Bull there. Yes, that's right. And same Kevin Scott on 29 minutes from a corner makes it 1-0. Second half's end to end, but it stays that way, thank goodness. And we come away with a 1-0 win, and we're nicely cemented in third place now. We have Stoke City at home next. 26,000. The crowd's up a little bit, reflecting the fact that we're third and we're getting results. Same team from Jim Smith, and Alan Ball, Stoke manager, plays his strongest side again. Peter Fox, George Berry, a great fullback, Noel Blake, Mickey Thomas, David Kevin, Tony Ellis, Wayne Biggins, and Paul Barnes, but they're never in it. From the off, it's Newcastle who are into the game, and it's a surprise goal scorer on 3 minutes is Benny Christensen, but didn't matter who it is, we're in the lead, and on 32 minutes, Mickey Quinn adds to the score sheet, so we're going half time 2-0. Second half's Stoke never in the game. We should have scored a hatful, but we didn't. But just to cap it off, Benny Christensen scores the second on 70 minutes, and we run out 3-0 winners. And that puts us in second place, which is, cause for great merriment. So we're off now on a trip to Plymouth. Plymouth Argyle hanging on by their fingernails, so we'd hope to get something out of this game. John Gregory, their manager, team very similar to the one that we played at St James's Park. He has made one change. He bought Kevin Hodges from Watford at opposed to his attack, which is interesting. Jim Smith doesn't have any of these worries because he's able to pick the same team again. 11,700 at the game. Plymouth got off to a flying start. Tommy Tinian, the dangerous little midfielder, scores on 11 minutes, so it looks like we're going to struggle. But Mark McGee on 25 makes it 1-1. It stays like that at half time, and second half it's end to end, but never looked like anybody was going to score, so it ends up a 1-1 draw. And we're fixed in third place now. So a big push. Everybody wants to try and secure the promotion place and not to have to go into the dreadful playoff system. We now have Swindon at St James's Park. A game we should win. 26,500 at the game, which reflects on the fact that's a game that they expect us to win. We've got a same full side at Newcastle that Jim Smith picks. Swindon, Ozzy Ardiles, their manager, has brought his team, and it's identical team to the one that we played at Swindon. Digby, Kersley, Colin Calderwood, John Jugs, Paul Bowden, Alan McLaughlin, Tom Jones, Ross McLaren, Steve Foley, Duncan Shearer, and Steve White. But it's a bore. The only way to describe it, I remember this, it was 0-0 at half time, and it was 0-0 at the end. They could have played another 90 minutes. Nobody was scored in that. So it's 0-0, but a safe thing is it cements our place at third, our position in third place, which we could have done without. We're now at home to West Ham, and tough game. 31,000 at the game now because people are getting the bit between their teeth for promotion. I think they can help push them over the line. Jim Smith, one change, Kevin Dillon drops out and Liam O'Brien comes in. West Ham United with Billy Bonds is their manager now. Talented team. Misok Sologo, their goalkeeper. Potts, Dix, Foster, Colin John Foster, it says. Tony Gale, Martin Allen, Kevin Keane, Stuart Robson, Stuart Slater, Trevor Morley, dangerous winger, and Jimmy Quinn, with Paris and McAvenny as their substitutes. West Ham are up there challenging, so we're going to have to be on our mettle for this. And unfortunately, on 38 minutes, they go in the lead 1-0, and absolute mayhem about the penalty, but penalty they got. Then after half time, Benny Christensen, 52 minutes, scores, and then just before the death, Mickey Quinn makes it 2-1, and we get a 2-1 win, and we're now nicely stuck in third place. And our last game of the season is at Middlesbrough. Well, of the league game this season, there is. We're at Middlesbrough, and unfortunately, it's a disaster. We go to Borough with the same unchanged team, but for some reason we fall apart. And I think, well, the reason's Bernie Slaven, really. I shouldn't say that because it was Bernie Slaven's match. 0-0 at half time. Nobody expected what was to happen in the second half. And in the second half, Bernie Slaven just tore us apart. 60 minutes he scored. McGee scores on 69. Ian Baird on 70 and 76, and then Bernie Slaven on 90. Borough beat were 4-1, which sits we in third. If we'd won that game, we could have been second. So we're now off into this playoff situation, which is dire in many more ways than one. However, Newcastle being Newcastle, before we play in the playoffs, we go to Ireland and play a friendly with Derry City.
Never in the world.
Yes.
I can't believe it. I didn't know that.
Yeah, just before the playoffs. I mean, and it beggars belief. Only 3,000 at the game. Now, I tried to find out why we did that, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. But that's what we did.
Was that in the week building up to the game?
Right before the Sunderland game. The Sunderland game was on the Saturday, and the Wednesday before we went to Ireland and played Derry City.
Unbelievable.
So we went to Roker Park for the first of the playoff games, and 26 poor crowd, I think, 26,000. Jim Smith got the luxury of an unchanged team. And Sunderland by now have Paul Bracewell in their side. And their team's Tony Norman, John Kay, Hardyman, Bracewell, Bennett, McFall, Hours, Gordon Armstrong, Eric Lazenby Gates, Marco Gabbiadini, and Ruben Agnabola. Kevin Brady and Thomas House as the subs. And I was at this game with our Neil. This was a time when I was doing some promotion stuff for Sunderland and Shields Building Society. And they used to give me tickets for these matches because they sponsored the club. So we used to get into the director's box. Well, on this one, they couldn't get us director's box tickets. They could only get us clock stand tickets. So they're in a clock stand full of Mackhams, right in the middle. Couldn't have put any closer to the middle where me and now Neil. I kept saying to him, whatever happens, sit on your bloody hands. Don't do anything. Well, of course, you know what happened in this game. It was settled or unsettled by a penalty kick that Budgie Burridge saved. And there was mayhem after that. But who was standing up in the middle of the clock stand with his hand in the air? Neil Mitchell with 10,000 Mackhams staring him down. I was hoping we'd get out with skins on, but we did. But it was really exciting. But a game we should have won, but we didn't. And so we had to go to the second game at St James's Park. But at least we had a 0-0. We thought we could get something out of the return game. Well, 32,200 at the game. Well, we didn't get something out of it. It was nothing more than a disaster. 13 minutes, Eric Lazenby Gates scored the first goal. And then Marco Gabbiadini on right to the end, 85 minutes, scored the second, which prompted a mass invasion. But they won, and I hate to say it, but they won deservedly. 2-0. We just didn't turn up for some reason. I've never ever got the bottom of that. So, and there's Gabbiadini, of course, it was a pity. 32,200 went home, very disappointed, and ended a very, very disappointing season because no wonder Sunderland are called the Black Cats. We were third in the league, right? And we had the best goals scored for the whole league, 80 goals scored. Sunderland were sixth and could only score 70 goals, and their goals against was 64, which was one of the worst in the league. And that they win the playoff. They go to Wembley and lose that match against Swindon. But Swindon, because of their financial irregularities, are disqualified, and the Mackhams get promotion. So no wonder they're called the Black Cats. An eventful season, the only way to describe it. And just to end it, we go to the Midlands to play a non-league select 11 in a friendly. Well, what a way to end it for Newcastle United. But Jim Smith gave it a go. He gambled, really, because the players he brought in were experienced and some people would say some were over the hill. Mick Quinn's top scorer with 34 goals. We scored 80 altogether. We, as you kept hearing me saying, unchanged team. The previous season, we played 46 games and used 35 players. This season, we played 56 games and only used 23 players. So, you know, it shows you how a fixed team can settle things down. That's it, Steve. An entertaining one, but a long one because of all the games. You know, it was inevitably going to be a lengthy one, this one.
The end of a wonderful decade.
I think so, yes.
It's certainly been entertaining, certainly plenty of stories. We take a step into the 1990s on the next Those Were the Days. But for now, George Mitchell, thanks very much.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Do appreciate it.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.